If you are doing your own research, particularly in, let's say, the history of the church, then the burden, the full burden of integrating everything, processing and integrating, it falls on you. And so this was the case for me. And I was making new discoveries in the history of the church, and it fell on me to make sense of them, both intellectually and spiritually. Joseph Smith used this quote from the poet Alexander Pope, where he said, "A little knowledge is a dangerous thing," right? And I started making discoveries. They were genuine new discoveries in the history of the church. Some of them were really exciting, but they weren't like a big picture of things. They were just discoveries about this incident in church history or that incident. And as I started piling up these new discoveries, what I started to find is that the picture of church history as I had been taught it and the picture of church history as I was seeing it increasingly with these new discoveries, they were diverging. They were going two different directions. And at first I handled that pretty well, and with time I didn't. There was this increasing kind of dissonance inside of me because I had new discoveries, but I didn't have a big new picture to put them in, to make full sense of them. And so gradually, at first without even realizing it, I had started losing my faith. And I was very sincere. I was completely sincere in my quest for truth. But along the way, I also was kind of letting go of some of the more practical spiritual aspects of my life during some of this research, right? And so I didn't have that to kind of serve as an anchor. And so I ended up, after several years of this research, just not believing anymore, right? I didn't believe that Joseph Smith was a prophet. And at first I still believed in Christ, that he was God's son, and then that kind of fell apart because I was applying the same sorts of skepticism to the Bible that I did to, the history of the church. And then I started questioning God, and this had to do, to a great extent, really with the problem of evil and suffering, particularly the suffering of children. And also, I became aware of how deeply mental illness could affect people. I saw people in the world around me just who it seemed like they were affected to such a core level by this, and I just couldn't see the goodness in this, the justice. And so I lost my faith completely. I was an atheist, and I thought to myself, like, there's no room for an atheist in the church. Someday I'm going to publish these things that I'm finding the way I was seeing them at the time, and they're not going to want me in the church anyway, so I should just go ahead. Maybe they'll kick me out, and so I should just go ahead and remove myself. So I put in a letter to have my name removed from the church records. And when I first put in the letter, I felt like a sense of like liberation, like, wow, I'm doing this, And then when I got a letter back saying that I was no longer a member of the church, I felt very different. I felt like I'd been kind of like cut off from the only real community that I had ever known. And I thought, whatever else I understood at 8 years old about baptism, I understood that I was trying to, be like this Jesus and do good things. Why would I undo this? But I thought, well, it's too late now because, you can lose your faith and stay in the church. But if you want to join or rejoin the church, they want you to believe. And so I thought, I can't do that. And so I thought I was out permanently. And so I entered into my own sort of what I call like a personal kind of wandering in the wilderness at that point.